yes. Always a great way to start when the buttons don't work. You know, you push them, and the buttons don't work. It's an imperfect world. We're just living in it. A very good and happy Friday to you, and I have some gigantic breaking news. You may have caught this just in the last few minutes. President Trump, a short time ago, I have all the audio for you, saying that the creepy suspect in the assassination of Charlie Kirk is in custody, has been caught, that his father came forward. Additional photographs have emerged, all kinds of weird stuff having to do with these videos and his limping leg. And is that a 30-06 in your pocket, or are you just angry with Charlie Kirk? And we've got a lot of news and new information for you on all of this. A lot going on. Yesterday was, of course, September 11th as well. President Trump went to the New York Yankees game, and it was a sight. I've got to tell you, they cheered President Trump. They chanted USA. They chanted Donald Trump at the Yankee Stadium. President Trump meeting with the members of the Yankees baseball organization in the clubhouse before the game, and going very, very well. Oh, that's going very, very well. But there are a lot of things to talk about today, not the least of which, by a long shot, the headline is Arrest Made in Charlie Kirk Assassination at Utah University Event. I like that headline at the Fox News website, as opposed to something else. But Arrest Made in Charlie Kirk Assassination at Utah University Event. And I want to play for you what President Trump said on his Fox News interview this morning, about an hour ago-ish. And boy, there's a lot going on. Now we're standing by for an FBI update, as they say, a press conference by the FBI. Now, if you were standing around yesterday waiting for the FBI update, you could have waited for, 7 or 8 hours, and then I had a little bit of a presentation, and it wasn't a press conference because they announced at the beginning that they're not taking any questions. There will be no questions. Well, that is a statement rather than a press conference, and that happened after how many hours? And Kash Patel got in an airplane and flew to Salt Lake City, and from Washington, D.C., presumably, and Dan Bongino got an airplane, maybe the same airplane, maybe a different airplane, and flew to Salt Lake City. And then we didn't hear from either one of them last night. It was a peculiar set of circumstances. And I got to say, after yesterday and day before yesterday, where they announced they had a subject, person of interest in custody, and then they didn't. And here's the video of the guy saying, "I have the right to remain silent," and all kind of weird. And they say, that's not him. We let him go. And then much later during a press conference, I talked about it yesterday in Utah, it was put out on the Twitter that another suspect, a person of interest, was in custody. That went on for, I would say, well over an hour. I didn't start a stopwatch on it, but well over an hour, and then got back. We let him go too. And now today we have an update only because President Trump was on Fox News, and now we've got allegedly a 9 a.m. Eastern Time press conference by the FBI out of Orem, Utah, and hopefully that will begin while we're on the air. We only have a 3-hour show. But I've got to say, there have been some sloppy missteps in the last couple of days by, I think, the FBI primarily. But let's get to what President Trump said just a little while ago. There is a lot to talk about. The world is it's a mad world. There is no doubt about it. But with that said, and it kind of annoys me when people make missteps at critical times when I think I wouldn't have done it that way. And then it turns out I'm right when I say I wouldn't have done it that way, because I like to make the fewest missteps, the smallest number of missteps possible. But call me old-fashioned. I'm just wild. But there's a lot to talk about. Trump tells Fox and Friends subject in Charlie Kirk shooting is in custody is headline number one this morning. Pics released of Kirk shooting, person of interest, wearing American flag shirt. That was the lefties. They're like, oh, look, he's probably, because, no Democrat would wear an American flag shirt unless they're murderers who are trying to blend in a crowd of normal people. pro-American, normal people with functioning brains. But the Daily Beast, hey, see? And last night, the liberal on the Right Squad on Newsmax is like, it could be a right-winger or an extreme right-winger or just a middle-of-the-road right-winger. And I'm like, so you just pulled that directly out of your deeply sequestered rectum. That came out of absolutely nowhere. Just amazing stuff. But this is what the Democrats do. If they're talking, they're lying. Pretty amazing stuff. Man, oh man. And the left-wingers at Mediaite with their headline, Law Enforcement Official, singular, doubtless anonymous, tells New York Times that report on Kirk shooter's political views could be inaccurate. That's one anonymous source to the New York Times, could be inaccurate. Use softer language there. Amazing. And they're talking, of course, about the transgender and Antifa messages on the ammo, as reported by the Wall Street Journal yesterday morning that I shared with you in real time, as the memo from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms was leaked. And now the Democrats get to work real quick, fake journalists. They, like at the Daily Beast and Mediaite, and they get to work lickety-split. Jennifer Bowers, what's her name? Bonnie. And she's writing, maybe he's not really a transgender Antifa person, even though he wrote that on bullets, according to the ATF memo. Maybe that's all wrong. Because they lie about everything. Isn't it amazing? Maybe not amazing, but certainly appalling, still appalling. And the Democrats, they love murder. Boy, do they love murder. Campus Reform, the great people at Campus Reform, such a wonderful organization. They have a story out of a university, a major American university. College Democrats say there's no reason to feel sorry for murdered Charlie Kirk. And they all jump in there at social media. They get to reveal what slime they are, and they do it quite frequently. But when you hear this, and we've got audio also of a bunch of Democrats saying terrible things about Charlie Kirk, and they're glad that he's dead, because this is what the Democrats have raised in America. This is what their cultural dominance and information dominance and dominance on college campuses and on high school campuses has done to the United States of America. The Democrat Party is raising generations of bloodthirsty ghouls to be the next generation of Democrats. In fact, the current generation of Democrats in America. Isn't that amazing? There was an incident at the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis yesterday that was mostly bizarre, more than anything, but someone was shot by a police officer, and it turns out it was a mistake, and there was a fake, mass shooter on campus report. But we've got that. And in Colorado, a couple of students were shot at a school there, and all they'll say is that the gunman was radicalized by some extremist network. They won't say what the extremist network is, but he sure hated the Jews. So it could just be the Democrat Party in the mainstream. I think that's it. Funny story about Joe Biden's presidential library, which nobody wants to give money to. Nobody wants to give money to build the Joe Biden presidential library. He calls it the library. And what would you put in a Joe Biden library? Anyone, like an auto pen? And what would you put in there? Pretty amazing stuff. I don't know if they could build anything as ugly as the Barack Obama. It's not even a library. What do they call it, a center? Because they know if they call it a library, no Democrats will show up. They're not the readingest bunch in the world. So we've got that. And Joe Biden lashing out at Kamala Harris because he's a racist, just like Kamala Harris said during the presidential debate. Now let's go to the breaking news of the hour and of the day, and that is President Trump this morning on Fox and Friends talking about in the standing by for the FBI, and we intend to go to the FBI or quickly turn around the FBI audio when and if they hold a press conference, because it's been pretty sloppy so far. I've got to say, not to be too critical, but it's pretty obvious for anybody to see. It's plain for the world to see. President Trump this morning on Fox and Friends. And hey, any update on the murder, the assassination of Charlie Kirk?
I think with a high degree of certainty, we have him in custody.
I think with a high degree of certainty, we have him in custody. Now, there are a couple of hedge words in there, a couple of qualifiers. I think with a high degree of certainty, but I don't want to go too far here because it's I don't know, it's the FBI. And even when you put your own guys in charge, maybe it's still the FBI. And sometimes this stuff can be hard, too. A lot of developments as we were going yesterday, including these videos that came out in bits and pieces. And we're supposed to assume that everything we're told about the video is true. This is him on the way to the campus, and it looks like he's got a stiff leg or a sprained ankle or maybe a 30-06 stuffed down his pants. And then there he is jumping off the roof, that video, and he doesn't appear to have a rifle or a stiff leg or anything, and he hangs from the roof and then jumps down 10 feet or so. And did he twist his leg there? I don't know. But you don't see a rifle. But then they say they found the rifle out in the woods off campus. Well, where was the rifle when he was running across the roof and dropping off the roof to bring to the woods to wrap in a towel and leave in the leafy forest out there? Some peculiar things about that I've got to say that I'd like answers to. If I were there asking questions at the FBI briefing, those would be among my questions. President Trump saying, "Well, how did it happen? How did you get the guy?"
I don't want to go too far. I'd like to tell you some stories at how it happened, but essentially somebody that was very close to him turned him in. And that happens when you had some of those good shots. Somebody is going to say, whoa.
Somebody very close to him turned him in. Who would it be that is very close to him that would turn him in? Somebody very close to him. And it's true. You see the photos. And yesterday, my best girl, everybody was doing it in every household, looking at the photos and saying, well, if you know this guy, if he's your brother, if he's your son, if you went to school with him, if you worked with him, you're going to say, hey, that's Michael Piercy. I know him. I can identify him from that blurry photo because it wasn't that blurry. But there it is. And President Trump then asked, well, tell us more. Somebody very close to him. What do you mean?
And somebody that was very close to him said, that's him. And essentially went to the father, went to a U.S. Marshal, who was fantastic, by the way. And the person was involved with law enforcement, but was a person of faith, a minister. And brought him to a U.S. Marshal, who was fantastic. And the father convinced the son, this is it. And again, I'm always subject to be corrected, but I'm just giving you, based on what I'm hearing, they'll give you a much more active. I just heard about it 5 minutes before I walked in. As I'm walking in, they said, looking real good. They have the person that they wanted.
The father convinced the son. So a pastor, a man of the church who the Democrats condemn, and they don't even want you saying, God bless or thoughts and prayers. The Democrats will attack you for that. Jen Psaki will attack you that because they're from the after-school Satan Club party. They're the Democrat party. That Satan in the morning, Satan in the evening. Ain't they got fun? But the father, President Trump said, convinced the son, and so the pastor went to the father and said, hey, these photos are out, and we both know who it is. And apparently the pastor, according to what President Trump is saying here, convinced the father to come forward and say, yes, I recognize that person. It's my son. Lawrence Jones, who actually comes from Campus Reform originally, since we were just talking about them, asked, well, what happens to this guy? And it's Utah. They have, last time I think they had the firing squad last time I looked.
What's going to happen to this guy?
Well, I hope he's going to be found guilty, I would imagine. And I hope he gets the death penalty. What he did, Charlie Kirk was the finest person. He didn't deserve this.
Well, that's for sure. Air Force Two with the vice president aboard. The vice president and Charlie Kirk have been friends for a long time, apparently before J.D. Vance was even in politics. And it was Charlie Kirk that introduced J.D. Vance to Donald Trump and the Trump family, leading J.D. Vance to where he is now. J.D. Vance took Charlie Kirk's body aboard Air Force Two back to Arizona. And when Air Force Two landed, the air traffic controller said, welcome home, Charlie Kirk. You did not deserve this. We're at 888-630-9625. Now, NBC Fake News is reporting that they have the name of the individual arrested as the suspect in the Charlie Kirk assassination. And it's NBC News, so it could very well be wrong, of course, because they get as much wrong as they get right. But the people at NBC Fake News, they say that the person in custody is a 22-year-old from a young male person. I don't know if he's got gender issues yet, but he's a Democrat, and most of them do. But Charlie Kirk suspect named as Tyler Robinson, and the Telegraph out of the United Kingdom with the headline on that, too. Suspect named is a Utah resident, and that is a great leap forward, and I'm very happy about that. I talked about this yesterday just a little bit, but the assassination of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King on April 4th of 1968, right? Shot rang out in the Memphis sky, and free at last, all that stuff. And that's how most people under the age of 50 know the Martin Luther King assassination. But did you know that the Democrat, James Earl Ray, who assassinated Martin Luther King, and I call him a Democrat because he had been volunteering with the presidential campaign of Democrat Governor George Wallace, who had been running for president in 1968. And James Earl Ray had been volunteering with the racist Democrat Governor George Wallace just a couple of weeks before he went to Memphis and shot and killed Martin Luther King. But James Earl Ray fled the scene and was not captured. And boy, was he not captured. I mean, he fled, and when I say he fled, he was gone for 2 months. He was captured on June 8th, right? April, May, June. So it's honestly, it's about 2 months. And he was captured in London, England, at Heathrow Airport. Now, that's been lost to the sands of time, I think. Almost nobody seems to remember that wild detail about the Martin Luther King assassination and James Earl Ray, the Democrat Party campaign volunteer, just like James Hodgkinson, who shot Congressman Steve Scalise, a Bernie Sanders campaign volunteer. I think a pattern is emerging here. We're still standing by for the 9 a.m. FBI press conference out of Orem, Utah. It is now 9:35 a.m., but, sometimes you got to organize and get your stuff together. President Trump broke the news today of the arrest. Now it's out there all over the place. Tyler Robinson, the Democrat in question, apparently turned in by his father after his father's minister or pastor came to him and said, let's look at these photos together because this psychopath is your son. And what's with the assassination, transgender, Antifa stuff? What's with all this? And the father apparently then, but the sketchy details, and the details are pretty sketchy right now. Sketchy details that we have so far suggest that the pastor saw the photos, recognized the 22-year-old man, went to the father of the 22-year-old man, apparently named Tyler Robinson, and said, listen, we've got to do something about this. And then the father went to law enforcement, which is what you'd expect. And again, everybody looked at these photos yesterday afternoon and last night, and said, well, if you know this guy, then you know who it is. If that's a family member, then you know who it is. And sure enough, the father, I think, qualifies as a family member, probably a man, identifies as a man, and maybe not even a Democrat, Utah. But the Democrat Party is raising generations of bloodthirsty ghouls, and they call themselves liberals, I think. Wipe out Israel from the river to the sea, terrorize Jews on college campuses, firebomb the Jewish governor's house, and on and on it goes. All right, let's go to the telephones, Michael, and talk to the nice American people. Let's go to Dennis, calling from Chesapeake, Virginia. Dennis, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Chris. I called you yesterday, but when I took it off speaker, I also hit the mute button. Didn't realize what I had done. Hey, all these Democrats calling out for violence and stuff. I mean, Chuck Schumer stood in front of the Supreme Court building. You won't know what hit you. There was a whirlwind coming, called out for an assassination on Kavanaugh and I forget the other justice. And an assassin showed up. And then Pam Bondi's like, oh, nothing to see here. I mean, Janine is now in D.C. Pam, they need to write that warrant and let jury selection begin.
And
for real, this
for Chuck Schumer.
This is absolutely a solid case. I mean, he called for violence, extreme violence on Supreme Court justices. That's beyond the pale. That's
now,
not acceptable.
Michael Piercy is making faces at me, and that indicates to me, Dennis, that he has whipped out that Senator Chuck Schumer, the Democrat leader of the Senate, known as the Lizard King, when he went over to the Supreme Court steps to threaten the lives of conservative Supreme Court justices. And here is the Lizard King, the leftist, one of the heads of this death cult called the Democrat Party.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions.
You will pay the price, so you will reap the whirlwind.
You will pay the price.
Yeah,
Gorsuch. You will pay the price.
And Kavanaugh.
You won't know what hit you.
Yep.
You won't know what hit you. That is unacceptable. That has to be, I don't care how it works out, he has to be charged and tried, period. There's no other exception.
Well, I got to tell you, the Democrat in that case that showed up from time zones away showed up with a pistol, loaded pistol, additional magazines, burglary tools, kidnapping tools outside of U.S. Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh's home. Nicest guy in the world. The Democrats vilified him and demonized him and smeared him and slimed him and slandered him and lied about him during his confirmation hearing. They brought in that lunatic, mentally ill woman who had to have 2 front doors on her house and couldn't fly on planes unless she sent a private jet to bring her to Washington, D.C., a woman that nobody remembers being at any party in high school. Nobody remembered the party that she allegedly talked about. And then when it was all boiled down, they said, oh, yeah, Brett Kavanaugh was handing out punch at a party in high school. And that was the felony that he had committed. Apparently, not even saying alcohol-laced punch, just punch. Like Hawaiian punch.
It's all our leaders. If they can't defeat them legitimately, they're going to kill them.
They're the left.
Go ahead, Dennis. That's what Schumer called for. I mean, he's evil. He needs to be prosecuted, period. You hear me, Janine? He needs to be prosecuted.
Yeah, the U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., Janine Pirro, the former judge and now U.S. Attorney. Isn't that amazing?
Now, and I love her. Don't get me wrong. I love her.
Yeah, she's wonderful, and she really is, too. And in person, I've met her a handful of times, and she couldn't be sweeter, couldn't be nicer. She really is wonderful. But the Nicholas Roski, the Democrat that showed up outside of Brett Kavanaugh's home planning on breaking into the house with burglary tools, kidnapping the justice and his family, murdering them with the pistol and the extra magazines of ammo. And he was planning on going after at least two other conservative justices, too. And since it was Chuck Schumer that lit the fire under the Democrat assassin, Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh were named by the Lizard King at the Supreme Court. And this rhetoric is perfectly normal. I mean, again, President Trump went out to dinner at Joe's Seafood.
It's criminal.
And they had a mob in the restaurant waiting for him, somehow got a tip that he was coming in, even though the reservation was made an hour earlier. And so likely it was an employee at the restaurant that leaked to some left-wing friends. And then the left-wing friends showed up, and they're yelling at President Trump and the Vice President of the United States and the Secretary of State and the Secretary of War, yelling at them that they're Hitler, of course, in the restaurant, because that has become standard Democrat Party rhetoric Again, Adolf Hitler's party was the Socialist Workers' Party of Germany, just by the way, and it's time we started telling the truth about all of that. And the Socialist Workers' Party in various parties in Europe in the 1930s and 1940s. But I got to tell you, the Democrat Party has become this frothy, anti-Israel, anti-Semitic party. Democrats attending big Democrat universities, the Jews attending Democrat universities are being terrorized every day. And don't show your Jewishness. Don't wear a Star of David. Don't support Israel when they're being attacked by savages.
Free DC! Free Palestine! Trump is the Hitler of our time! Free DC!
This is the Democrat morons with tiny little squirrel brains at the fancy restaurant on 15th Street with the president, the vice president, secretary of state, secretary of war, Pete Hegseth, in the restaurant at the time. And everybody's Hitler because the Democrat Party has raised a generation or more of glassy-eyed zombie loons who are bloodthirsty ghouls and goblins. And honestly, we've got this Democrat now apparently in custody, although the 9 a.m. FBI press conference hasn't started. It might be 7 hours. Maybe Kash Patel might have to fly somewhere or something like that before they don't take any. In fact, you've got the soundbite. And listen to this, Dennis, because after hours and hours and hours of waiting for the FBI press conference in Utah yesterday and say, well, the FBI director is going to get on a plane and fly there. And it's not nearby. And, and Dan Bongino, the deputy FBI, he's going to get on a plane and fly there. Don't know if it's the same plane or two different planes. And they go to hold a press conference. And then finally, what time in the 9 p.m. hour last night, after they started delaying it at 1 p.m. or something, and the 9 p.m. hour waiting and waiting and waiting. And as Kash Patel has landed, Kash Patel is in the building, and another hour goes by. And then finally they came out, and who was it? The governor of Utah at the podium. The FBI director, Kash Patel, is standing off to the side. I don't think I saw Dan Bongino. And came out. It's a press conference when you take questions from the press. If you come out and show a chart and point at it with a pointer and say things, that might be a briefing, but that's not a press conference. And the first thing they did was announce, we're not taking any questions.
Now, I'll just give you a little warning. We will not be taking any questions at this time. We're giving you the latest information we have, being as transparent with everything that we have.
Without taking any questions. That's nothing could be more ridiculous. Dennis, we're living through a crazy, crazy time, are we not? Honestly.
Let me say one more thing.
Yes, sir.
They call for violence. They bring violence. We have to start somewhere. Schumer violated the law. He called for an assassination. He needs to be charged. Pam, Janine, he needs to be charged. I know you're listening.
Yeah, and,
Thank you,
look, I agree with you 100%, Dennis. Thank you for calling in and for being persistent. I appreciate that, too. But listen to Dennis. He's a reasonable, rational person. They call for violence. And what is Dennis calling for? For prosecution of crimes committed by, I guess he is technically the senior most Democrat in the United States government right now. He is the ranking Democrat in the United States Senate, as he was when he put those threats out there for Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Gorsuch. And the psychopath Democrat was also planning on murdering. According to reports, and the news media dropped this like it was nothing because it's another Democrat psychopath with a gun lurking outside the home of a senior government official, Brett Kavanaugh, Supreme Court Justice. And the guy came from California to commit these crimes. Nicholas Roski, Democrat, 29 years old at the time of the crime. And honestly, the guy is unbelievable. Now, actually, I think he's 29 years old now. But the 2022 event, and it's true, it was incited and instigated by the ranking Democrat in the United States Senate, the Lizard King, Chuck Schumer. And there are no consequences, and the news media doesn't cover it. And honestly, you think, give me every anchor man in Washington and New York. Bring him into this radio studio. I'll ask him the name of the guy that shot Congressman Steve Scalise, and they won't know it. I would bet every dime I have in my checking account, which is practically every dime I have. And I would that not one of them could name the man, the Democrat who was a Bernie Sanders campaign volunteer, and they couldn't tell you that. Jake Tapper couldn't tell you that, and they couldn't tell you who Nicholas Roski is. And honestly, these people, James Hodgkinson, by the way, was the Bernie Sanders campaign volunteer that shot and nearly killed Congressman Steve Scalise with his Chinese military weapon. But pay no attention to any of that. Bop, bop, bop. All right, now let's go back to the telephones, Michael. Let's go to Moscow Bob, calling from Moscow, which remains in Russia. Moscow Bob, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Good day, Mr. Plant.
Hey, Bob.
No one's talked about a fact, which is a true fact. Where would the African American be today if Abraham Lincoln wasn't assassinated, or if Martin Luther King wasn't assassinated by the left, or with Charlie being assassinated? Where would the African American community be? They'd be in much better shape because the Democrats have held them back all the way from Abraham Lincoln through Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King would have brought the African American community to the normal ranks. But people like Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, all these guys would not be as rich as they are today because the African American would have already had their voice in the world.
Well, certainly true. Abraham Lincoln and the Civil War and the Emancipation Proclamation, the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment. The Republican Party is the party of liberation, of freedom, of abolition, as it was called at the time, to abolish slavery. And that's all the Republican Party. And the Democrat Party, the party of the Confederate States of America, of course, and the South and the Civil War, the gray versus the blue. And that's another reason that the Republican Party should be blue in this red-blue thing, and why I don't use red state, blue state when I can avoid it, because the Democrat Party has never been more red. They've never been more left. They've never been closer to Soviet communists. And I've got to say, and blue, of course, the Union blue, the Confederate States of America, gray, and the gray Democrats. They're not blue, but they stole blue because they lie about everything. And it was their news media people, mostly in Washington, that decided, let's make the Republicans red, wink, wink, and we'll call ourselves blue because blue's more positive and red is negative, and it also represents the left. And we're the only country on the planet Earth that doesn't represent the left with the color red, and that's because the Democrats corruptly got to choose first. But Moscow Bob, boy, a wild time to live in Moscow, huh?
Yes, it is. And the media is such one-sided in America. It's amazing. It's like this last missile or drone or whatever that ended in Poland or landed in Poland.
Right.
Well, it's just like the last one. They failed to tell you the circumstances behind it. The first one was actually a Ukrainian drone that killed the two Polish people, but that's all been hushed up. This other drone is Poland shut off the GPS system. So the navigation of these drones were affected. So, yes, maybe they were shot down and fell over Poland, but is it Russia's fault or because they're coming from Belarus? Or is it Poland's fault because they shut down all GPS so there was no navigation?
The world is an endlessly complex place, and we live in pretty much a battlefield these days, Bob. Home in the United States, America, it looks an awful lot of the time like we're on a battlefield. As President Trump, he was shot. As Charlie Kirk's widow, his funeral will be coming up soon. There are calls to have him lie in state under the Capitol Dome in Washington before a funeral. We'll see what's happening with that. President Trump will attend the funeral. The Vice President, J.D. Vance, will attend the funeral. And the security threat will be extremely high because the Democrat Party has raised a generation or two generations of violent, bloodthirsty loons who love death more than we love life. How many times do I have to say it? I have audio for you coming up of a bunch of 20-somethings celebrating the murder of Charlie Kirk, and they represent the Democrat Party today better than anyone. There are reports now that the father of the assassin who was approached by his pastor, the father of the assassin, and the assassin is now named as Tyler Robinson, 22 years old, was arrested in southern Utah. But the father, apparently a law enforcement person, either current or retired, restrained his son and turned in his own son to the police. And according to a reliable source that I have, who's law enforcement, said that the father of the suspected shooter is in law enforcement himself. And that's kind of a big deal. Got to say, an important detail. The New York Times, they pretend to be a newspaper. They're a front group for the Democrat Party. Reported the suspect was taken into custody around 11 p.m. local time in southern Utah on Thursday night, last night. And the alleged shooter lived in a $600,000 six-bedroom home in Washington, Utah, about 260 miles south of where the assassination took place in Orem, at the hands of a Democrat raised by the Democrat family, the Democrat Party. It's like the Manson family. And the New York Times, $600,000 house, six-bedroom house. And my law enforcement friend says the father was or is in law enforcement himself. I've got more for you coming up, and the FBI briefing. We are on top of it for you. Don't go anywhere.